Fuck.
All right. Hey, welcome back. Craig Martelle here, coming to you live from the subarctic, and today we have Mark Dawson, who just woke up, and Janet Margot coming to you from, where are you coming to us from, Janet?
Seattle.
Seattle. Is it raining there like it is here in Alaska?
It is not. It is so shocking. It is not. It's actually sunny and blue skies.
Oh my God, it doesn't get any better than that. What about you, Mark?
Well, it's late here, so it's 10 o'clock. So, but no, it's been very nice. We've got a very nice week. Very hot weather, I think, for us. 30 degrees this week, so that's
ouch.
Nice.
Ouch. Do you have an air conditioner?
I have people waving kind of palm fronds at me. That usually works.
I mean, here in Alaska, we don't have air conditioners for the houses.
No, we don't use it in this country. It's unusual.
Yeah. So today we're here.
I don't have AC either.
You don't? In Seattle?
No, okay. I don't need it.
Okay. I would think for the humidity, just because of the rain and stuff like that. Let's see. Oh, we have people on. We have people live with us already.
Awesome.
So we're going to go. So now that we know that we're recording, usually we just make small talk and inane chatter, which I seem to be exceptional at for a little bit until we know that we're recording. And then we get into it. Janet, this is all your show. You've got a bunch of questions that our good people in 20 Books to 50K have asked. So if you want to just start taking them, answer the question, read the question, answer it, and let our folks absorb the knowledge.
Sounds good. And for those of you who are just joining us too, feel free to ask more questions. I do have a short list here. I'm just going to start rolling through these. So the first question coming in from Summer Lynn, she asks, is there any different advice or things to consider when making ads for nonfiction titles? I love this question for a number of reasons. One, a couple of folks throughout the past couple of webinars have been asking if these tactics work for nonfiction, and the overwhelming feedback is they actually work better for nonfiction. And when I say these tactics, I'm really talking about sponsored products in particular. If you think about how one-to-one the relationship is between a book, a nonfiction book, and the search terms, you can easily understand how it might be much faster to strong performance. For instance, like if you look at the fiction book, How to Build a Girl, that is not a guide on how to build a girl. It is a memoir, a little bit of a rock and roll memoir. But if you look at how to run AMS ads, that's what people are going to be searching for. That's what people will find. So it's pretty easy to do keyword sponsored products targeting using nonfiction. Also in the non-books world, when sponsored products was started, the algorithm gave heavy weight to the title, which again, like in the examples that I gave, the title would make a lot of sense in how to run AMS ads, but wouldn't in fiction. So fiction, as we all know, it's tricky, there's nuances, and it takes some work to drive that level of success that you get in nonfiction.
And while you're talking about fiction or nonfiction and just an ad, I know we had a question as well, and of course I'm going to probably interrupt your question. What is the right number of keywords to use in an ad?
So that, I don't think that necessarily matters, or excuse me, that it's different between fiction and nonfiction. What I do want to emphasize, I know there's a lot of focus on volume and there's a lot of questions on volume. I would say run quality over volume, and that quality is really all about the relevance. However, when you're starting out and testing, whether you're just getting used to ads as a whole, or if you're just starting out with a new book or a new series, you're going to need to test at volume. So I know a couple folks in here have, said, is 50 too much or too little? I would say if you can get relevant keywords that are, the 200 to 400 range, try those. Make sure you're getting a good breadth of keywords. So you want, I teach different buckets to look for. So you want to look for comp authors. You want to look at comp titles. You want to look at keywords that are very specific to your book. You want to look at tropes within your genre or subgenre. So you want to really get deep in all those different prongs or buckets of keywords. But relevance and quality is really what's going to matter over strict volume. And to set your expectation, I think anybody who's been advertising will say that if they have, no matter what volume they have, you're never going to have 100% of those keywords running. That's just the way the system works for whatever reason.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. There, on that note, though, there's also a follow-up question where folks have been getting some feedback from Amazon that using too many keywords might be bidding against one another. I want to make a little bit of a clarification there. So if you are, I suggest not reusing keywords across campaigns. When that happens, you won't actually go to auction and bid, bid against one another. Keyword in one sin and the same keyword in another campaign, only one of them is going to get sourced. So you have to think about, why are you duplicating that ASIN and keyword set across those two campaigns? That is something that I would definitely avoid. If you have a series, because there is a use case for doing this. If you have a series, and let's just say, you have a core set of keywords that, regardless of the book, is going to apply to every single ASIN in that series, then try doing those ASINs in a single campaign, or use an ad group to make sure that those keywords run against all those ASINs and don't compete. I don't know if you look a bit perplexed, like you might have a follow-up to that.
No, I'm just thinking. I'm just because consolidating the keywords. Usually, when I do a keyword search in KDP Rocket, Publisher Rocket now, you do a search and it provides all these keywords, and you just bundle them together and throw them in. I never thought about consolidating them. Here are my trope keywords. Here are my author keywords. You could break out the authors, but then here are the title keywords that I'm targeting, because I have a tendency to shotgun more. You run the ads, and then you pick out the ones that suck, and you kill them, and then you subset the ones that are working, create a new ad, and use just those. I actually like 50 to 100, just for the simple fact that what you can show on the screen and see them, it's just easier to work with in bundles of 25.
Also, though, Craig, you probably have a hell of a lot of data signal from your years of doing this and your years of writing. Not everybody's in that position. So there might be a lot of tests. So one thing that I even do, if I'm doing, let's just say I'm doing a set of comp authors that I'm not really sure about, I might have gotten data, let's say from Yassiv when it was up, and I'm just not sure how tightly relevant they are, but I always have like that core set where I know these are going to be killer. I'll just break those out into different ad groups, and it's easier for me to take a look at it and keep that relevance really tight, and then have the other ones tested on the side.
I like it.
Let's see here, just kind of staying on that. Some folks have questions about, well, they said how many words. We already addressed that. What type of Amazon ads do I think are the most efficient? Keyword, product, category, auto. I kind of use them all differently. So when I go to start on any new book, I would do a keyword and auto. Automatic, to me, it is really just a harvesting tool. Just for those of you who aren't totally clear on this, automatic is where you just are kind of hands off, and you let Amazon choose what keywords it thinks are best for your book. Now, there's some mixed feedback there about how relevant those automatic keywords might be, but test it and run, and usually you are going to get at least a handful that are going to be really strong, and then you can take those and just start to double down and further invest on those. Those should be learnings. You'll get search terms out of those. You'll start to understand how customers are finding your book. At the same time, like I said, I know that I have certain comp authors or certain comp titles that I want to start with, and I'll do that over in my manual campaign. I don't usually start with product or category. It's just because I like to keep it simple and just check out how things are going and what the trends are like, but you could. But that's always my step two. I'll start to run a category ad, which I think is really great for harvesting. It can go pretty broad. You can decide that you want to target books by their rankings. So you can do like a 5-star ranking, or you can even do a 3-star ranking and below. It's up to you. There's 2 different tactics. One says, I know the 5 stars are getting a ton of glance views and I want to be on those pages if I can be. And then the other way to look at it is, I don't know that my bid is going to make it on those high glance view pages. So let me go to the lower rankings one, and then people will say, oh, this book is ranked low. I don't want to buy it, but wow, my book has 4 or 5 stars, and drive clicks that way. So there's a couple tactics you can take there. And then again, you're harvesting what works, you're getting a data signal, and you're figuring out where you want to invest that makes sense. Sometimes also, if I have and I have a book for whatever reason, it's not really taking off at all, which we all know happens, or not in the way that I want it to, I'll just dump that over into an actual isnt targeted campaign, and it may or may not take off that way. As we know, it can be sometimes haphazard. So use them all at different times, and use them together to drive learnings. Let's see, I'm just scrolling down what folks asked. Oh, first, let me just answer one of them that's in the chat right now. Do we use broad, phrase, or exact? There are options and I never know which one, or if I should pick all 3 for each keyword. Again, different tactics. They're going to teach you different things. Try doing them. Try using all of them. What's very interesting to me is that in some campaigns, I'll look at the performance and I'll see that for the exact keyword, or excuse me, I'm not talking about exact match, for a specific keyword, sometimes it's just yielding more efficient results. In other words, CTR and conversion is higher when it's used as a broad, and sometimes it's higher when it's used as an exact. I don't have the logic behind that, but that's why it's another thing for you to test and see what works for your book. Someone has a question around placements on poorly reviewed products, and it's something that I just mentioned. I'm not sure what the follow-up question is, so if you want to add some clarity, I'm happy to address that.
I put a new one on the screen.
You did? Oh, all these places to look. If you shouldn't reuse keywords across different campaigns, can you A/B test effectively for budget, copy, etc.? On the Amazon Ads platform, there is no such thing as A/B testing. So if you're trying to test what works in one campaign versus another campaign, it's never going to be apples to apples. One campaign will win, another campaign will not win, but it's not really because one is better or more efficient than the other one. I think that's a disappointing fact for me to share, but there you go. Let's see. Vicki, I'm sorry. Vicki's saying that she's asking for any simple books to recommend to get the lingo down. In the SPF course, I do have a full glossary and break everything down really specifically for beginners. I try to really start with the baseline and go bit by bit through key concepts and glossary. That's not something that we're going to address today, though, unfortunately. I'm sorry.
But it is in the ad. Well, if it's in the ads course, we can copy the link into the feed here using my affiliate that Mark was so gracious in offering, just to focus people. And one thing that Mark emphasized earlier today was that there's a 30-day no questions asked guarantee, so you can dive in, you can look, see if it's for you, see if you want to keep going on it, and there you can evaluate it at no risk. An initial cost and then no risk, and hey, if it's not going to work for you, then you can bail out. So we'll copy that in at the end of this. Great.
I also want to address a question that's actually not entirely to do with Amazon ads, but it is related to your marketing and advertising strategy as a whole. Luke here in the Facebook group asked about Amazon ads versus other services. And he says he doesn't know if it's a fair one, but I just want to address it anyway. He says, what's a reasonable click-through rate on Amazon ads versus other ads that target people in a reading book, such as BookBub, or excuse me, in a reading mood, such as BookBub, or that target readers much more specifically like Facebook? So I wouldn't compare necessarily CTR on these. I'm also not sure what the benchmark CTRs are on those other platforms, and the CTR really varies widely on Amazon ads by genre and subgenre, and really by your targets. But I just do want to say that I don't think this is an either or play. I think this is for part of your integrated marketing and advertising plan. You need to use all these three together. You have different objectives with all of them. I mean, I don't think that anybody would dispute that the BookBub email, the promotional emails, I'm not sure about their ad. I hear mixed feedback on that. But presumably all of these should be hitting different kinds of readers and different parts of their reading journey or mood, as you stated. So I suggest using them all together maybe at different points in your ad strategy.
I think
Mark and Craig, you want to add to that.
But when you're talking marketing, it's important that you touch the noses of readers in multiple ways. We've run Facebook ads and Amazon ads concurrently on a similar product, and we couldn't tell. It looked like, hey, Amazon ads are killing it. We killed the Facebook ads, and all of a sudden, no sales. Brought the Facebook ads back, killed the Amazon ads, no sales. It's like mutually supporting from what I've seen. What do you say, Mark?
Yeah, I'm running ads on all platforms all the time, so it depends what I'm trying to do. But usually, at the moment, more of my spend is on Amazon, but a good chunk is going on Facebook to the US at the moment, about $100 a day, and about the same to Australia, which is working really well. But nice. Yeah, it's different. You've got different people in different states of mind, and all the platforms offer different abilities. Facebook's targeting is just ludicrous. The things you can do with Facebook ads would kind of make your hair fall out. It's so impressive. Amazon's main benefit is you can insert your book literally below the buy box. You can interrupt someone's purchasing decision just before they click. They're ready to buy. They are one click away from buying. That's not the case on Facebook or BookBub. BookBub, on the other hand, is a smaller. I mean, obviously it's a huge audience, but compared to Amazon and Facebook, it's minuscule. But the difference being that those are self-selecting genre fans who've told BookBub they want to be told about deals in those genres. So they're really hot. So you should, in terms of in order of CTR-iness, to make up a word there, you should find, I would say BookBub will be number one. Probably looking at Facebook number two, and then Amazon number three. That tends to be the way that it works for me. Others may find those 2 and 3 changed over a bit, but my strong advice is that you should try all of those platforms. You may find they all work, or you may find that one works, but you will need one of them to work.
Yeah.
And they may work better at different times, like you mentioned. I know over the years you've contacted me and telling me, Janet, AMS isn't doing it for me, but Facebook is. So it's definitely varies. So let's see here. If an ad is getting low impressions, do you up the bid or daily spend or do something else? So I rarely look at an ad at the campaign level. I mean, obviously it's my starting point. If I have a dashboard with, let's just say 3 campaigns, although I know many of you have a ton more than that. If you start with like 3 campaigns, I will look at the high level campaign level to determine which one I'm going to drill into first. However, I look at the target level. It's all about those targets. You have to look at the target level and see if it's low impressions or low click through, etc. I wouldn't go to upping the daily spend yet. I would look at, if you're getting low impressions, is it also low click through? Is there an issue with your relevance? Definitely, though, are you bidding enough? You know, I do promote starting conservatively, but it doesn't mean to start rock bottom cheap. It means to start there and watch it. And like you're saying, if you're not getting low impressions, start to crank that dial up and you should start getting impressions. The only time I would say to increase the daily spend from the beginning, if you think it is ridiculously low and you haven't given yourself the opportunity to get many impressions and clicks. So if you're starting, let's just say some people actually do this with starting like under $5 or even at $5, there's only, there's just so much that you're going to be able to get with that. So you have to really consider what your expectations are and if the math is going to work out. And we go into that in a lot of detail in terms of how to optimize and troubleshoot in the course. I guess Mark wants some absinthe. I'm not sure what that's about.
Someone asked me what I was drinking. So
okay.
Want some, got some, and a stogie.
So what about oversaturation? Should you pause your ads from time to time? That is a great question. I don't have anything technical and hardcore, but I would say that first off, I don't like totally pausing ads. I get very nervous what the ads machine is going to do to my campaigns if I totally pause them. I hear people talk about pausing their ads and then they go to restart them and they can't get the same level of traction. So I would say scale down either your budget. I'd say budget over bids, just scale them down and really pull back. I do think, so if you're talking about actual saturation, I'm not sure if you're talking about ad fatigue, and that's the conversation, that's what we're talking about with respect to pulling back and just not trying to throw out so many impressions out there. You could also be asking about competition within a genre, but I don't think that's where they're going. Craig, what do you think? Saturation is in competition in a genre or just about the ad fatigue?
Craig is frozen. I'll be Craig.
Okay. He looks pensive.
I think he's talking about ad
fatigue.
saturation of the one author advertising with too many ads into the auction or showing on the site even. It's not something I mean it doesn't bother me. There's a lot of readers to go around. So I mean unless the ads are, if they're not hitting the right performance metrics, then I might switch them off. But if they are, then I don't care. I think I looked the other day how many impressions I've had on the ads since I've been running them. It's ridiculous. 100 million, some of that is just crazy now.
But you go up and down. It's not like you keep them all at the same spend all the time, right? So
exactly, yeah.
But there's people out there that definitely talk about how they haven't changed anything, so they keep exactly the same targets, and then performance is declining. And in that case, they may just be, they may need to start tweaking something or pull back for a bit, depending upon the genre.
Yeah.
Craig, we lost you for a while, but I think you're back.
Oh yeah, that my internet goes in and out, so I switched. I switched to my MiFi. And I'll probably go out again here in a little bit and I'll switch over. But you're still live. That's a great thing about Be Live.
Yeah.
You guys can still keep talking and going and you're good. So just ignore me.
Okay. Well, when you were frozen, you had quite a pensive face. So I was wondering if you had something really valuable to say when you returned.
No, my valuable point was I forgot to tell you that you may lose me during the show and just keep talking.
Yeah, I know others in Alaska. Communication is rough. We have here a question for a traditionally published author who is self-pubbing the backlist. Are the best practices via ads still the same? So I'm going to just first address the one thing that you didn't say, but it is a shame that a traditionally published author cannot at this time also invest in their trad published book. Since those often still need some love. But in terms of self-pubbing your backlist, I don't know what the backlist is. So I don't know if it's a series, if they're related or what the deal is there, but the best practices overall should totally be the same. It doesn't really matter how you publish, as long as the book is eligible to advertise, take it away with the same best practices.
Yeah, and also it's a really good opportunity. If you've suddenly got 6 books or 7 books or however long your backlist is, those are effectively new books to everyone who hasn't ever seen them before, and you're going to reach lots of readers who your publisher never would even known how to reach. So these are, it doesn't matter if they could be published 25 years ago. They're brand new for the readers you're about to introduce them to. So it's a great opportunity to welcome to the dark side, and get stuck in.
We have a question here also. I started my first AMS campaigns on US and UK yesterday, but couldn't find how to advertise on Australia Amazon. So I'm sorry to report that at this point, KDP authors do not have access yet to advertising in Australia. Fingers crossed. Not happening yet, though. And I'm sure there will be a really big announcement when and if that happens in the future.
Facebook works very well. So if you want to get to Australian readers, then that's what I'm doing right now. It works well.
Same with Canada. I mean, in terms of the no access, but I would say try to hit the English-speaking marketplaces for sure. Mm-hmm. Someone asked about a good ACOS. I can't give a profitability in the SK course ads for authors. Mark goes through a calculation to determine your profitability in his monitoring ads module. Mark, I don't know if you want to speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah,
because of KU especially.
Yeah, ACOS is an indication, and you can use it as kind of a health check, but I wouldn't be obsessed about it because it's wrong in lots of different reasons. It doesn't include the fact that Amazon's taken 30%. First of all, it doesn't include KU. It doesn't include read through, most importantly. So it only takes into account the orders that are placed after someone has clicked on that ad. So it might include a couple of, if they buy 3 books, it will include that, but not necessarily. And it won't include it if they then buy over the course of 6 months. So what we try to do is to work out what the maximum ACOS we can afford, depending upon how much we think we're getting each time we sell the first book in the series. So James, who I do the podcast with, and I were talking about this the other day, and James actually came out with frankly, he's watching this now, so I'll say it's a ridiculous figure. It's much too high. I feel fairly comfortable with an ACOS going up to 200%. Probably a little bit more than that. Now that's me with a fairly big backlist, and I'm quite confident in my numbers. I wouldn't recommend that for everybody, but just the kind of takeaway from that is I've switched off lots of ads before when the ACOS ticked up towards 85, 90%, and I was almost certainly making money on those ads. So you just have a think about that holistically as to what that's actually showing and not showing.
Great. I want to take one from the Facebook group also, because this comes up periodically, although not super frequent, but I still want to unpack it. Richard asks, why can't I use AMS to promote my self-published works that are printed in hardcover through Ingram Spark? It's my books. Amazon gets 55% of all sales, plus the AMS revenue. Makes no sense not to allow this. I would agree. I think the whole book ads team would also agree. This is really not a policy. So it's not a business policy. It's not a hard decision that anybody made. There's a technical hurdle that would need to be overcome to make this happen. I got my fingers crossed on this one too, that somehow they will overcome that hurdle, but I can't say, I don't know what's going on because I'm not on the team any longer, but I just want to be clear that it's not a policy against anybody who's printing outside of KDP print. It's not to try to get more profit. It's technical. Let's see here. Let me just see if I can get one more from the group since there were some early questions this morning. It's about the replay. Okay. Okay. This is a question that I think is also from Felita here on the line right now. She's asking, what are your thoughts about when to start advertising? I've heard many say not to start out when you only have one book. And somebody earlier also asked, I think Danny asked, Should you wait to run ads until you have at least 3 books? Now, lots of folks who are prolific writers out there will say that you should wait until you have 3. That's when you're really going to have the most profitability for the books. The reality is, though, in terms of the actual ad performance, sure, go ahead, start advertising when you have 1 book, but you better still be writing and make sure that you're following it up with another quality book also, because, you know, when they're done with the book, you want to send them somewhere. You still want to be marketing to them and making sure that you have something that you can actually have them read through and go to the next book in a series or even just a related book. But don't let that hold you back as long as you're writing. The other thing that I just want to call out is that for the traditional publishers, they're really not advertising series very much. They're just doing one-offs. So if you do it right, you know, if you do it well, if you're really focused on it, you just have 1 book, by all means, you can have a successful ad. But that, I just want to also add, though, that you should watch the cost on that too, because if you're only advertising 1 book, you will have more risk related to the cost of the ad because you don't have that read through.
Yeah, in that case, ACOS is something you should pay attention to, and also take 30% off because you're not getting the full 100%. That's something that will keep you safe on that one.
Daniel's asking about my thoughts on the new video ads. So I work a lot in video now, and I love video. I'm not sure about video for books. I know that there was a trend of folks who were doing actual book trailers. My understanding is that the return is just not there for book trailers. What I do like, though, is if not everybody has access to sponsor brands, but if you do have access to sponsor brands and you want to put video on that page, it's super engaging. Mark, you've experimented with video, though, so I don't know if you want to talk about that for a bit.
Yeah, I agree with, I mean, the problem with trailers is that you say it's a book trailer, people will automatically compare it with $1 million Hollywood trailers, and no author is going to be able to stand up to the new trailer for the Avengers, right? So bear that in mind. So I think those kinds of dramatic trailers are really hard to not look cheap. So that's not what I do. What I've done now is I'm using a little studio in the UK, and they take the elements from your cover and they animate bits of them. So I've done one for book called The House in the Woods, which was really good, and the one I'm running at the moment is for the new Milton book, which is called Killer City, and it's set in Kansas City. There's a van kind of appears in the book cover and drives into the distance, and then it pulls back and you see all the the characters and the type and the price and all that kind of stuff. It looks really, really good. What I'm doing at the moment is I'm running that extensively on Facebook to what I would call a warm audience of people I know are fans of mine. So maybe they're on my Facebook channel, they're on my list. And I'm also experimenting, as Janet says, with sponsored brands. So running that. So if someone, and they're very targeted on me. So it's the 17th book in the series. I'm not advertising it to people who've never heard of me before, because that's quite an ask to get them to take if they're searching for lead child, they're probably not going to buy the 17th book in the series by an author they've never heard of before. But the audience who will buy that book are people who have bought my books before. So if they're searching for me, it could be my name, it could be my character, it could be when is the next John Milton book out, that kind of variation. I will show that ad to them, and they are buying it, and they are buying it at a level that I know is profitable. So it's not making me tons of money, but it's maybe 3 or 4 pre-sales a day that adds up to lots of other ways I'm generating traffic and helps that towards a strong launch when I'm ready to go.
So video is good under certain circumstances with a specific strategy towards that. Question, do you feel that Amazon does not favor an older book, such as a first in series, as much as they push a new release? And do you feel like it's an uphill battle trying to get Amazon to push an older book? No, I don't. Although, I'd love to see examples of when someone believes this, because I actually haven't heard this before. That said, let's just pull apart a little bit Amazon, retail, and that ecosystem versus the ads. So Amazon retail definitely likes new releases. You see that new releases definitely get lift in search results. but they also might get new lift until they are not successful. Ads really relies on retail history. So an older book is going to have retail history, and hopefully it's positive history. So hopefully there's people visiting the detail page. There are reviews. Of course, there are the conversions, the sales. The ad system is ingesting all of that retail data. So I would actually love to hear more about this use case from the anonymous Facebook user. So yeah, I'm happy to take that question in one of the groups to get in a conversation about that a little bit more, because I love digging into these examples.
I think some of that negative impression might come from an older book that doesn't have a fresh cover. I've had old books I put a new cover on, a new blurb that I beat to death and made sure was a killer blurb, and instantly it's refreshed. You hit it with a 99-cent promo, and all of a sudden it's up in the charts. It's selling well. It has good reviews. I think when you're pushing an older book, part of that challenge is you've got an older, maybe a more stale cover, maybe a dated cover, maybe a dated blurb, and all those things are easy enough to change. Yes, you have to pay for the cover, but you don't have to pay a penny for a new blurb. You can jam that out and get something that converts, as opposed to something that's old and stale. Just rerunning a book that you published 4 years ago, you're going to look at it and say, this doesn't look right compared to newer books.
So Craig, you're talking about a strategy around repackaging it then, and to drive the customer interaction, right? But I just want to separate that a little bit. So you have those levers that Craig is talking about, but the Amazon retail machine and ads machine, they're not dinging you for being an older book in and of itself, but you do have to move those levers to drive that customer action. And then you're going to see a greater lift and a greater lift because of it, because it feeds into itself.
I think one of the basic premise that I believe that maybe you can confirm is that Amazon rewards success. If you have a book, if you have a book that's selling well, and it can be 4 years old, because I ran a book, books that I had written 4 years previously, I put them into a box set, and I ran that box set, and I was making $5-6 grand a month on this box set of books that were 4 years old, just because that package, it converted really well. I mean, really well, like 4 to 1 on the clicks to buys, and I couldn't have been happier. Yeah,
so there are levers. I just want to, when I say levers, you have controls to change how Amazon treats it or how customers engage.
Something I'll just add on that before you go on, Jen. I mean, just looking at my monthly, so this month, my second highest grossing book, in fact, the second highest grossing book is the first box set. So it's the books 1 to 3 in my Milton series, and that's about 7 years old now, and that's consistent. Now the reason for that is because about 95% of my ad spend goes on either the first box set or the first book, and I'll then I'll have some going on the pre-order for the newest book coming out, but no more than 5 or 10%. Almost all of the budget goes on the first one, and that's because I want new readers constantly coming into, I call it the funnel. So they're coming in at the top, they're reading. They not everyone will read the second book, but if they do read the second book, there's a greater chance they'll read the third book. And then if I get them to book 4, they'll probably go and read everything. In which case they suddenly become worth about $30 each to me. So that's me. My philosophy is always just pump all the focus on the first book, and then try to get them to read on.
That's great. Before I take the one that you just pinged me, Craig, I do want to talk kind of on the same thread of history. Janice is in the Facebook group asking, how effective are ads if the book isn't a new launch? Now, we talked about that a little bit, but she has a particular use case that she's traditionally published and she just got the rights back. So Janice, it's just exactly what we talked about here. The good news is that if the ASIN or the ISBN is on Amazon, you have gotten the rights back and you have inherited all of that fabulous history that you've had on there. So you should be using the same tactics that everybody's talking about, that Mark was talking about here, and pull readers in, but you've already got that base, the retail base built that you then can further build on. let's see, a question here. Any specific advice for full KU authors, aka authors who make 80% of their revenue there? So, I mean, I think with KU, it's fantastic because the Kindle Unlimited program obviously gives you more visibility in the ebooks category, which is fantastic. And there are other mechanisms that the KDP team is using to drive discoverability of your title. But in terms of ads, I think the most specific advice is to go back to what Mark was saying about monitoring and know the real value of a click, because you're not going to be able to get it just from that awful ACOS metric or just by looking at sales, because you're going to have the borrows. And I'm sad to say that at this time, Kindle Unlimited metrics are not included in the dashboard. So you need to do some extra math there. Somebody's asking when I'd recommend moving from sponsored products to sponsored brand ads. Well, first you need access to sponsored brands, and there's very few authors today that have access to sponsored brands at this time. I just want to make sure, because I know there's a mix of folks that are with us here today. Sponsored brands is a completely different ad type that's available. And you are supposed to have 3 or more books in that ad slot at one time. So I would say that I don't want to spend a lot of time today because it's not applicable to everyone, but we do have a distinctly separate module deep diving that in the ads course. Mark, do you want to add anything to that at all?
I mean, I would.
No?
No, I can add something to it. I mean, it's
Access first.
Yeah, not everyone is going to get sponsored brand access, so I wouldn't do that. It's frustrating to see authors who in those slots, but that's just how it is. That I think things will always be evolving and changing. So hopefully there'll be greater access to more products as time goes by. But I mean, the main focus for me is if you're just starting out, then don't look at those shiny objects. It's master sponsored keyword ads first of all.
And the other thing, we went into this on the webinar, and Craig, I think you posted last week's webinar in the 20 books to 50K group. Okay, great. And that's one thing to really double down and focus in on sponsored products first. Sponsored brands is different and the return will be different, and your return will never compare to what you're getting from sponsored products for the average author. Craig, I see there's a question there for you.
You bet. Do I keep the same ASIN? Oh my God, yes. That social proof, all those reviews, all of my stuff is pretty well reviewed and highly reviewed. Actually, my 2 latest books, I'm 100% on 5-star reviews. One's at 57 reviews, and the other one's at 15. The one I released
You've got a big
just a few
family,
days
though,
ago.
Craig.
I
a very big family.
Yeah, that's it. And I would hate to lose that, and so I keep the same ASIN. I published 2nd edition of Become a Successful Indie Author, same ASIN. I don't mess with that. There's only one. I published Monster Case Files, a 9-book series, and they were novellas, and they did very, very poorly because I targeted them wrong. I had bad covers, so I unpublished all of them, just made like they never existed in the first place. I rewrote and republished the 9 as a single complete box set with a new ASIN, new covers, and that made a whole world of difference. So there's a time when you want the ASINs to go away, and then there's a time when you want to keep them. And if you've done most of the things right, then you probably want to keep your ASIN.
Stefan has a question here. Should you only start advertising once you have at least a handful of reviews? As Mark can attest in his SPF 101 course, driving reviews is really important. So you can advertise and hope that leads to some reviews, but the reality is that users like to have that social proof of stars and reviews on your book before they click, especially for an unknown author.
Yeah, the unknown part is important. I mean, I've gotten promotions and stuff like that on books that hadn't released yet, and they went out there, and it took 3 days before any reviews showed up, and it was perfectly fine. But once again, I'm a known quantity with my readership, and I know those reviews are coming. I don't do ARCs. I actually don't push reviews, and one thing we don't do in 20 Books 50K is talk about reviews, because there's so much corruption within the system that if you take advice the wrong way, or you try to push and buy reviews, those are very, very bad things to do. And I push organic reviews. Talk to your readers and convince them, hey, if you want to support me, I appreciate you buying the book. Borrow it in KU, that's great, but please leave a review. If you like the book, just let me know. And I have a call to action right after the end in every book. Please leave a review. They buoy my spirits. They tell me where to focus my efforts and which series to write. So I make those calls. I make that pitch. I mean, we don't talk about it in 20 Books to 50K, but I know that social proof, those stars are really important to validate you as an author, and that there are readers that like your stuff.
Yeah. I want to answer Joy's question. Is there any way to get lock screen ads to continue delivering without costs skyrocketing? They seem to either spend a ton for her or stop altogether. Also in that webinar, which if you haven't checked it out, please do, since it's been posted. I do talk about the importance of doubling down on sponsored products and only using lock screen under certain conditions, with, quite frankly, for anybody to get, and that even goes for traditional publishers. It's a tough product. So I don't have a clear answer for you, Joy, and I'm very sorry about that, but I just want to kind of help you rejigger your expectation on it. Craig, is there anything that, or Mark, is anything that you guys want to focus on? I think we have most of them, except for there's a bunch of questions about sponsored brands access, which I just don't have an answer to at this time.
I like the question on scalability. How do you know when to scale? And what's a tactic to scale up from a successful ad? So
let me break that down a bit. When do you know when it's time to scale? First and foremost, you should have some success. Second off, you have to have a good idea of what your tolerance for risk is, because when people try to scale, sometimes it's difficult, and then sometimes they're taken off 0 to 60. So there's effectively two kind of schools of how to scale. One is horizontal, which is basically you're creating more campaigns. I'm not a fan of horizontal, although there was a time when that was necessary, a necessary evil on the ads platform. I don't think it's necessary now. And the other way is vertical, where you're starting to crank up your bids and potentially crank up your budget. Crank up the bids first. Keep control. I want you to really think hard about how you can keep control of the spend. You can keep control of your spend through your daily budget. And then also, if you're using portfolios, any campaigns that are in those portfolios, you can have another budget set there. But as you start to increase your spend, you can just increase the spend at the target level. So let's just say you have a keyword that's, or a target that's working really well, and your bid right now is 40 cents and it has killer click through and killer conversion, and you want to double down on that. Add 5, 10, 20% to that bid if you're comfortable doing that. The other thing is that look at your placements report and think about what your waterfall, what your metrics look across the board, what they look like by placement, by top of search, by detail page, and see if you want to scale and you want to crank the bids at the placement level, if it's doing well, and see if you want to increase your investment there. I don't know if you guys have anything you want to add there to the tactics that you've learned that work.
I'll scale horizontally and
take
vertically.
That as a no.
I mean, I've always I can I do it either way. I mean, vertically is easier to, it certainly keeps a cleaner dashboard, but I'll occasionally I'll refresh my ads usually once every month. I'll troll, find out what the best keywords I think might be for the next month. I'll pick out the top 150 ASINs. I'll run different campaigns based on that data, and that can mean I've got quite a busy dashboard. In fact, it does mean I've got a very busy dashboard, which given that I'm quite tidy, it annoys me sometimes. But that's that's how I tend to do it. I'll do a bit of both. But there's pros and cons to each, I think.
And the other thing that I just want to call out with Mark's experience is that there's not one way to do everything. There are different tactics you can take, and don't be afraid to try different ones. And, quite frankly, if anybody wants to sell you a silver bullet, just question your guru.
Yeah.
And that absolutely.
And Amazon does help in some cases. Like when they send you an email and say, hey, here's how your ad campaigns are doing. And this one is spending $30 a day. It's spent 100%. And every day by noon, it's spending 100% of that $30. And it recommends, hey, you should go to 45. So in a lot of cases, that's actually good advice and not Amazon trying to milk you. You got to go in and look at the ad. Are you getting the clicks? Are you getting the conversions? What's your profitability if it's a first in series? And you take all that and you put it together and you say, hey, I can go to 45. Now, you pay them now and you get paid later. So cash flow from a business perspective is an issue. But just understand that sometimes that is good advice. And they're saying, we're willing to show your ad to more people if you're getting the conversions. You might want to take them up on that. Just understand, here's what you're going to do. And then Amazon's going to spend it. So know that the money's going.
I just want that you're saying that sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good. So definitely do that math, understand your profitability. Also set your expectations that just because you're cranking up that budget, it does not mean that your success is going to scale at the same rate or ratio. So go into it. Again, it's back to what I originally said about, understand your, understand your own risk tolerance when you're scaling in any direction.
And when I've done that, I generally get lower. So if I'm getting a 3-to-1 ROI, if I scale up, I will go down to like maybe a 2-to-1 ROI. But as long as I'm maintaining a profitable ROI, I'm good. But it almost always, I lose that. It's not like, hey, I double my money, I double the revenue. No, it usually
right.
You lose some kind of efficiency, I would add.
Right. That's a good call out.
Let's see. Do we want to take another question? Has it been almost time? It's 50-some minutes. Mark is what are you smoking there, Mark? What is it? Monte Cristo?
There's a number of questions about that.
My brother bought it for me, so I'm not entirely sure. It's from Cuba, I know that. So yeah.
I tell you what, I deployed to UAE once for Desert Thunder. We were going to go bomb the Iraqis, the usual thing back in the 1990s. And we were in the UAE, and it's like, hey, they have Cuban cigars here, and we smoked Romeo and Juliet or Monte Cristos every day. We'd sit out in that ridiculous heat outside the building and enjoy something that we could not enjoy legally in the United States, and that was it was a guilty pleasure. No, we ended up actually never bombing anybody. So it was it was 2 weeks living in a luxury hotel. We had the whole floor because we had the commander in chief of CENTCOM with us. So we had the whole floor of a hotel for security reasons. Oh my God, it was ridiculous. We were getting like $105 a day and spending $5 a day on food for a month. So yeah. Sometimes you win, and sometimes you get more shawarma than you can possibly eat. See if there's any other questions.
That sounds good, though.
Let's see. I thought I saw a question that.
There is one that I'd like to answer. How do you know how significant non-Amazon reviews are in driving clicks from book product pages? Meaning, say, favorable comments on the book or previous works by the same author from New York Times bestselling authors, Kirkus, Booklist, PW, Genre Stars, etc. So I don't think that this is I know that this is not something that the Amazon ads algorithm actually takes into consideration in any way, but you can include those if you choose to use custom text, or that's that ad copy. In sponsor products, you can use those. And there's some data, not actually from Amazon, but from BookBub, and you can actually look in there. They have a great research area where they actually share benchmarks and data and talk about what kind of copy drives conversion, and reviews do drive conversion. So one could assume that it doesn't really matter if it is in the BookBub space or on the Amazon space, that readers like to make that connection. And again, have some social proof that, that what they're interested in is a worthy click.
Yeah, I mean, caveat to that, I agree with that. And the BookBub resource is excellent. They did a really good piece on that. But don't go and spend $500 on a Kirkus review, because that is just, you might as well just burn the money. It's a total waste of money. You don't need to do that.
I also don't think that that's something that readers are really well versed in, like what a Kirkus is, as opposed to, New York Times or some of the other big periodicals and stuff.
And I think getting a BookBub featured deal, it helps to have a review, because a lot of times they'll lead in their BookBub feature blurb with Kirkus review says, Publishers Weekly review says. So sometimes that will help get you a featured deal. However, the Dave Chesson from Publisher Rocket did a heat map study of the Amazon product page for a book, and under reviews, editorial reviews, people looked at who reviewed it, not necessarily what they said. So if you have a New York Times bestselling author, you have people that they know, like John Grisham says this is the next best legal thriller. They don't care about that. They just said, hey, John Grisham reviewed this book. And that's where people looked and spent their time. So you put the quote, and then you put who did it in bold. So that stands out even more so on the page. Just like the top line of your blurb, you make it bold, you make it stand out, you make it high impact. And that's where people go from the cover, the Z approach, right? The cover to the blurb, that top line, and then go down and see if there's editorial reviews and look at who did the review, not necessarily what the review was. So it's a very interesting study that Dave Chesson did.
Can I tell a funny anecdote? Well, I think it's funny. When I was traditionally published, I got a review in the Times, I think it was, and they hated the book. Right? It's a shit book, so they absolutely hate. They said they kind of had a litany of everything that was wrong with it. They picked that one bit that they laughed at, and they said, "This is about as good as it gets." So can you guess what the quote on the cover was? "This is about as good as it gets." The Times. F-U.
Yeah. Oh my God.
1-0 to me there.
That was John Brazy. John Brazy met Jerry Purnell, and he said, "Hey, I'm John Brazy," and Jerry Purnell said, "I read your book. It wasn't terrible."
Excellent.
And so he asked for, "Hey, can I use that as a quote?" And Jerry says, "Sure." So he used that as an ad. Jerry Purnell, "This wasn't terrible."
I like it.
Oh my God. I used a 1-star review once as an ad on a Facebook campaign. It was one of my most successful ever, because it said 1 star, so much swearing. Like, oh.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's you choose your poison, and then of course it goes back to you write the very best book you can write. I mean, if you get a bad review and it's well deserved, you're gonna have a hard time selling that second book if you can sell the first book, because you got to write a good book. You got to make sure it's as good as you can possibly make it, and that's what will keep the readers coming back. That's where you're going to get your read through. Like Mark said earlier, if you get them to buy the first book and then they move to that second book, now you've almost got them hooked. If they move to that third book and then start looking, I mean, they're valuable. They are extremely valuable overall. And you can't even put a value on it, because now they're on your list and they're going to buy the 18th book in the series, the 19th book. Just keep the quality going and keep the stories fresh and keep the money train rolling.
Amen.
Thank you very much for coming on, Gina. You are an exceptional talent that gives insight that normal human beings wouldn't necessarily get.
Well, I am really happy to share with your audience. It's been fun. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And this is actually, of all the shows that I've done, this was hit the highest number we've ever had, which 161 live viewers. We're going to cut this over to YouTube, so we'll probably have 1,000, 2,000 views on the YouTube video over the course of the next week or two. This was a great event, exceptional information, and we appreciate your time. We appreciate Mark staying up late for us. It's going at 11 p.m. there. Oh my God, I haven't seen 11 p.m. in like 7 years. So,
Craig, next time we do this, though, we need cocktails too.
yeah, I've got water. I mean, that's the best I can do. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you, Mark and Janet, for coming on board and talking to our good people.
Thanks. Have a good one.